Hello and welcome to the No Pants Show. My name is Susan Rook Diatori, and I am absolutely thrilled today to be joined by Kevin Sonney of the Productivity Alchemist podcast.
Productivity Alchemy, yeah.
Productivity Alchemy podcast. And I love that name because as an alchemist, you create something out of something else. So it's a fabulous name.
And it was a name I started using decades ago in the old dial-up BBS days and things like that. It just stuck with me. It was Alchemist. And the joke for the last, I guess, decade or more is I turn silicon into gold. I turn bits into gold because I've been in IT. IT has been, end to end, pretty much what I've done for my entire career.
And you bring that IT training, that engineering training to your inquiry into productivity. Before we go into the details, how in the world did you and your wife, Ursula, start this podcast?
So this one was mostly me. This is our third podcast together. The first one was purely entertainment. It was because we can't help but entertain people. We were driving back and forth to the grocery store, and every time we drive back, we'd like, somebody really ought to do a podcast where they review like ramen noodles, like gamer food. And we just wrapped episode 277 of Kevin and Ursula Eat Cheap, where we eat prepackaged foods, we review them, we drink heavily because after the first couple episodes, I realized we needed some alcohol to buffer, and it was an excuse to buy expensive beers and review them. And she does ciders and wines.
Off your taxes?
It's all funded through the Patreon, and yes. Yeah, we write it because it's part of the overall of Ursula's art studio. My wife, Ursula Vernon, Hugo award-winning author and artist. I could go through her resume, but it's really we don't have time. I could spend the entire thing talking just about her.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you've got the Productivity Alchemy set up on Patreon, and one of the things is buy me a cup of coffee. So did I not go into the Patreon enough? Do I have the option of buying you a fabulous beer or maybe some ramen noodles?
If you support us, the Patreon itself, and we'll get that out of the way right now. There's the Patreon and there's a Ko-fi page, ko-fi.com. Both linked at productivityalchemy.com. Let's get the shill out of the way. And one, you can donate whatever, and the Ko-fi page is there for, buy me a coffee, because I'm mostly coffee fueled. The Patreon is there for like recurring support, things like that. A lot of the money from the Patreon does actually go to pay for both the foods we use at Kevin and Ursula Eat Cheap, as well as the equipment and the medicine we need after we do Kevin and Ursula Eat Cheap. There's the acid reflux stuff, the high blood pressure medicine, the diabetes medicine. This stuff ain't cheap. And the Patreon helps pay for all of that, as well as new microphones, new recording equipment, and keeping the lights on.
Well, and it also helps to pay for the chickens.
It does.
My next question, I've been promoting this for quite some time.
Right.
What does Dotson the Rooster have to do with productivity? So Kevin, answer that question and tell us about your morning routine.
I was going to say, we should save that one for the end and keep them waiting. No, I'm kidding. So the thing is, people have to understand I'm an accidental chicken owner. I didn't want chickens. And then the neighbors had a chicken apocalypse. A raccoon got into their chicken coop and wiped out all but the one root chicken that didn't like sleeping in the coop to begin with. But now she doesn't want to hang out up there. So she would get up in the morning and get out of her roost in a tree and walk down to our garden, and just hang out there eating the bugs, scratching the dirt, doing what chickens do. And I started watching her, and chickens are possibly the greatest example of Zen. They are the thing that lives in the moment. When a chicken is being a chicken doesn't worry about when the sun's going down or when the sun's coming up, or if there are going to be bugs tomorrow, if there are going to be bugs in half an hour. Chickens are Zen. It is the most, and I found this very restful. Then I made the mistake of giving her some mealworms because I wanted to get a good photo, but that means that I have struck the ancient bargain with a piece of livestock saying that I will provide food to it. I was explained to this by my friend Andrea, Neolithic Sheep on Twitter, like that. No, you've struck the ancient bargain. Now you must care for this chicken. And she sort of moved in. Like it took a couple months, and we got some more chickens from Andrea. We built a coop. She still wasn't interested in that. And then we had the big snowstorm. And I was watching like the other chickens sort of march into the chicken house, and they're like, and I'm watching her, she's like, well, I'm just gonna walk up that long, cold hill up in the snow. And I look at her, I say, you could just go in here, there's a coop right here. And I could see the defeat in her eyes. She's just like, well, I guess you're right. And she's been living down here ever since.
So how do all of the chickens and Dotson the rooster, how do they play a part in productivity?
It's all about self-care and taking a break, right? One of the most important things that we take for granted or we forget about is that idea of self-care, or as I picked up from one of the people I've interviewed, the idea that before we can take care of other people, we need to put our own oxygen mask on first, just the same way they say on airplanes. And it's important for me if I'm having a really stressful day, I need some sort of outlet, and I can go outside and spend 5 minutes just being with the chickens and watching them be chickens. And they, and you sort of get into this groove where you start to exist in the now with the chickens of, there's breathing and there's air, and they're just this great example. And then when I come back inside, I'm refreshed. I've taken that break. I've kind of cleared out my head. Sometimes I'll come back with a better idea. If I was having a frustrated project, or like a blocking on a project, or maybe I just needed to decompress at not my last job, but the job before, I had on a given day something like 5 to 6 hours of meetings. And then I was still expected to do a full day of IT work, right, of my regular job, because we were in the middle of a big federal compliance security audit thing. And so I was expected to be in these meetings, expected to do that. I'm under a lot of stress, and just being able to step outside, take 5 minutes, 10 minutes with either the chickens or walk out back with the dogs, and just take that time to breathe, to let it go. It actually made me more productive. Because if I try to push through that wall, if I try to push through when I'm frustrated, when I'm anxious, when I'm wound up from a meeting, and I'm trying to get my thoughts in order to actually fix a problem or write a script or work on a podcast, if it's the end of the day, it doesn't flow. And getting that chance to breathe, which is possibly one of the things we do all the time and we take for granted and we don't think about often enough. And the chickens, they really help with that, because I can just stand out there and watch them and they'll just be like, yeah, I'm a chicken. I'm scratching the dirt. Dust baths are so much fun to watch. You just forget yourself as you see these birds, and they're ridiculous, rolling around in the dirt. This is how they get clean.
So this is actually, I'm a fan of the podcast. I've been listening to the podcast, and I'm like, when I heard about the chicken stories, I'm like, what in the world? So I thought, I'll try it. I'll see if it works with me. I don't have chickens, but as I told you before, we do cat rescue.
Yep.
And as a result of being in the cat rescue community, we have 4 cats.
Yep.
So I'll sit there and start my day and sort of get present to the cats. And then during the day, when I get all wound up, which I absolutely do, I'll just sit there and play with the cats anymore. And that's a teeny, teeny, tiny thing that has had a huge impact on my life. And I have to tell you, we've got to say welcome to a bunch of people. Krista, Cindy, Stephen, Danny. They're loving the chicken story.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go to work, said a couple of things about the very first thing that you do when you go to work that I think is super important for the productivity on the things that actually matters when you're running your own business and a freelancer.
Right. And even then, you have to remember, I've been a remote worker for 8 years. So my last 2 jobs, 8 years of employment, I've been 100% remote. And so a lot of what I do, while it's got a corporate structure behind it, does have that freelance stuff. And the first thing I do is, I go outside with my coffee, hang out with my chickens. What you doing? Dotson's on the porch right now having some worms. It's mealworms and some stuff. Yeah. I have a window. I have a window that looks out, so I can see them during the day. That's also, I'm in the middle of a meeting and I can look out and there's the chickens being chickens, and that's sometimes that helps. But I take my kid to school. I come back. I chill out with the chickens. Maybe I'll take a photo at that point. Share that with the internet, because apparently everybody loves chicken photos. It's the weirdest thing. And then I'll start thinking about, what do I need to do for the day? And the first thing, go through my email, go through any open tickets, and start identifying the things that will help my customers out, right? And whether that's, like in my last job, I ran the servers and I didn't have direct contact with the customers, but like our customers were development, our customers were QA, our customers were the sales reps who were selling the software we had on these servers to actual end customers. What's going to make my customer's life better? And then, are there any high priority issues that need to be addressed just out the gate? What's on fire? Who's yelling because something is terribly wrong and overdue? Where does all that balance? But it has to go back to being customer focused and customer centered.
Let me put an asterisk on this.
Okay.
2 things that people need to do when they're a freelancer, or actually any job, but it definitely is critical for freelancers, because basically what we are selling is service.
Yep.
Not manufacturing something if you're manufacturing something, you can tell when it breaks or it doesn't work right. It is less visible when you are selling a service. So your service has to be impeccable. So the 2 questions after getting centered from Kevin are, is there anything I need to do to make my customer's life better? And is there anything that needs to be fixed or addressed to make my customers' lives better?
Right.
And start.
Sometimes those are reversed. Sometimes you find out that something needs to be fixed or addressed before you can do new work. And that was at my last job. We were much smaller. I was definitely much more hands-on, closer to the customer. So that second question, what needs to be fixed, was actually the higher priority in that job.
We have a lot of people in the No Pants Project open community on Facebook. They're in various stages of their freelancing career. Some are still working in 9-to-5 jobs and doing a transition. For some, it's a side hustle. For others, they've launched a freelancing career and they're working on growing their business. There's one person who I absolutely adore, whose name is Sumax Amen. He is a comics artist, and his work is just absolutely spectacular. Well, he says something that I think applies to all of us. He says, I have trouble focusing. So before we talk about ways to solve the trouble focusing, you have several questions, or one particular question that is the absolute key thing to ask first.
Yes. And I think it's very important when you're deciding these things. Is it the right thing to do? Right? You have to at least stop and think, am I doing the right thing, whether it's by the customer, whether it's for long-term business, and constantly reevaluate that statement. That's part of I have Agile training, I have Scrum Master training, I've been studying the productivity systems and all this for years. And one of the things that keeps coming back that a lot of people forget about is going back and revisiting things, reviewing. And they try to build it in, but you should always be asking yourself, is this the right solution? Is this the right answer? Because sometimes you'll be like, well, I've done it this way for 5 years, but this isn't the right answer anymore. Or this doesn't fit for this customer. And it's really important to make that determination, because if you give the customer or you present the wrong solution, that's going to cause a bad customer experience. That's going to cause extra effort on your part for what may be a simple, could be a simple fix or could be a really complex fix, and you just have to figure out which is the right one for the situation, and to keep evaluating and reevaluating that.
And that goes double for someone who is starting, growing, managing, not only a freelancing business, but all of life with kids or family or pets or health and all of the things that
Mm-hmm.
we have to manage. As a freelancer, it's not the same as being guaranteed a paycheck.
Yep.
So it is critically important that we manage our time and manage our time well. And I love
Mm-hmm.
what you said. Check and see if the tool is the right tool for the job.
Well, and whether it's the tool or whether it's a system you're putting in place or whether it's the actions you're going to take, you should always make sure that you're using the right tool for the job. And you don't go out, and if you need to, like, my wife has some projects for around the yard and I need to saw some boards, right? Well, I can use the big bow saw and I'm going to kill my arm and it's going to take me hours and hours and hours. Or we can buy like one of the Dremel hand skill saw things, not the little one with the round, but like an actual mini circular saw thing. And that'll save us time. That'll save us energy. That'll get us done quicker. And it's the right tool for that job. When I go to install some new rain barrels, I'm going to use a different kind of saw on the gutters to cut that loose so that I can install the rain barrel, right? And you certainly don't take a hammer to bash out a ditch in the wood until it breaks free. That's just ridiculous.
I love those visuals. Dan Kennedy is a marketing guru. He's an email guru, and he's hugely expensive. And I've been reading his book about pricing and how to manage your time and how to think of time differently.
Yes.
And it goes back into what you said, outsource or buy what you need versus learning and doing everything on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of, when you're designing or building a solution, reuse. There's a reason WordPress and all of the WordPress themes are so popular, because you can reuse WordPress, you can reuse themes, tune them, tweak them, and keep moving forward. There's a reason the open source community has, you'll notice that when we talk about operating systems, we only talk about one of them, and that's the Linux operating system. I'm a big open source person. I just spent 2 days at an open source conference, so I'm still a little steeped in that world. But it's not reinventing the wheel every single time, and it applies to design. There's a reason frameworks like Vue.js or Node or these things keep popping up, because they're efficient, they work well, and I don't have to spend all this time reinventing the wheel every single time.
That's one of the reasons, actually, why I joined the No Pants Project community and why I bought the original course, the No Pants Project. It's because Mike Shreve, the creator of it, put together all of this structure. It starts off at the very beginning, identifying what do you want, and a whole bunch of internal work, and then moves on to specific things of, here's how you send emails, here are some email templates, here's how you set up a website, here's the value of this, here's how you set up a funnel, here's what you do with it, timing and following. Now, I follow that structure, and then I can begin to personalize it and create it exactly what I need it to be and do. Started out with somebody else's structure, his structure, because there's so much information on the internet about, gosh, everything: SEO, marketing, copywriting, how to be an entrepreneur. My brain was just exploding for years until I had this structure. I mean, it's fun to do all that research, but you're not going to get paid unless you're doing interviews.
Right. And the side effect is that really that's where productivity alchemy itself, way back to that first question, came from, is because I've been doing this. I've been studying it. I've been investigating. I have training courses I've taken, and I just want to share the knowledge and help people. And so while we have two that are purely for entertainment, this productivity alchemy is entertainment, but it's also much more about real people, and not, if you do this, it will solve every problem you've ever had in your life. I will drop it right out there. Anytime I see that, I know it's, and they're trying to sell me their solution. They're just out to make money. They're not trying to really help me. If it's all about follow this exactly and prescriptive and pay us a large amount of money and don't ever change it, then they're selling you something. They're not trying to help.
And this is one of the great things about the No Pants Project and Mike Shreve. He's like, listen, above all else, you have to serve your client. You have to serve your customers. And I've been on the receiving end of that service. I have gotten so much more value. I can't even put a price tag on it than what I paid for the original course. I can't say enough. So let's talk specifics. Cindy, by the way, thank you for joining us and breaking your rule about multitasking.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just tell you, I listen to Productivity Alchemy as I'm doing food prep. So very little processed foods. So everything is made from scratch. And so I multitask as I listen. It's a fabulous podcast. You're going to hear all kinds of things, and it's tons of fun.
And so, we do warn you about the swearing up front.
That's true. I don't mind. So Joanne Marie uses apps. She wants to know about Listonic and Goal Tracker. They help her a lot. Can you talk to us a little bit about apps that you've studied, tested, liked, even with the caveat that the individual has to study it themselves?
Right. So these are two apps I don't know. And there's so many apps out there. It's such a big field that it's really, I always sort of start with pointing people at a couple standard things and letting them grow from there. Right. Like I haven't actually tried Listronic or Goal Tracker, and I'm going to work on the theory that they are list management apps and goal tracking apps that help you and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I'm not an iPhone user. I have an Android. So there's some things I can't test that I have to ask Ursula to test. That's not one of them. But I'm going to add these to my list of things to test there. In the meantime, usually what I look for is I start with the basics. Can I add a task? Can I delete a task really easily? Whether it's from my phone, from the web, from a desktop app. And with the rise of Electron.js apps, a lot of things are getting desktop apps that would have never had it before. Electron.js is a piece of technology. I again, just been at a tech conference, still a little forefront in my mind. And then I start looking at the other features. Like if I need a to-do list, basic to-do list functionality, that's actually not that hard to do, but I need that to-do list on my phone and my laptop and say my tablet. Okay, great. Does it have apps for each ecosystem? Does it work well in each ecosystem? Does it sync? Synchronization is hard. And if I check something off on my phone, is it going to be 3 days before it shows up checked off on the web? Or if I add something on the web, does it get to my phone in a timely manner? If I edit something on my phone, does it create a duplicate entry so that I've got two? I mean, these are all things I've seen happen. Synchronization is hard. So
those are brilliant suggestions. Yeah. I never would have thought of any of those, but you're absolutely right. Because you could be using the right tool, but if it doesn't sync, then you're double scheduling or you're forgetting things.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Google Calendar because it just works that way.
Yeah, I like Google Calendar too.
But Apple's iCal is pretty good about that. Whether it's back to their Apple services or through Google or through Outlook. Microsoft service is good. There are a lot of really good solutions out there that cost nothing. The next thing I look at, though, is organizing that list. Right? Can I make a task and then put subtasks under it? Can I tag them? Can I create tags or labels so that I can sort them or search them easily? And sometimes it's not a big deal because it is so easy. Anyone who's using like Gmail or Outlook.com knows full well how easy it is to over-engineer your labels. Right? I have this email and I have it labeled 15 different ways with 15 different classes of things. And now, it feels like I have duplicate mail, but I don't. Or you've created so many labels that like there's one label with 3 things in it that you dealt with 5 years ago, and it's just still sort of out there. And so you have to be careful to make sure that labeling or tagging doesn't become its own job, even when you're dealing with these apps. Right? I usually set up like 3 lists. Home, work.
So what are your 3 lists?
Yeah. Home, work, and podcasts.
Oh,
Right.
that's smart. And then what? You have gradations underneath those lists?
Yeah, if I've got like a big thing, let's take um what's a big thing? Well, let's take the housework, the honey-do list that has come up while I'm unemployed and not doing full days. Like the install the rain barrel. I don't really have to break that into smaller things, but something like clean out the garage, which is a wreck. It's okay. So I need to call. There are so many steps. Call to get prices on dumpsters. Schedule dumpster delivery. Do I need to hire somebody to help me? There's a lot of crap in there, and I'm only one person, and I can't work all day every day on this. I have other obligations. There are all these subtasks. So if I can create subtasks under a big thing, so they become basically mini projects.
How long do you how long does it take you to go through that process? Because I love creating the lists and the sub lists and all of that kind of stuff. And I will find myself getting involved in that and just enjoying the puzzle work of the organization. And then I look at the end of it and I'm like, well, I've spent X amount of hours and I haven't accomplished moving forward. To a certain extent, the time is well spent.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's kind of a fine line between time well spent and time just navel gazing at your lists.
And that's part of the thing. I can spend all day on productivity blogs, just reading and poking and this, and not actually do anything for my system, or I can spend all day. Like I have a planner. Where's my planner that I keep? And it's a paper planner because I actually write faster than I type, even though but this way I've got my external brain that I can take with me anywhere. Ooh. And I've got stickers in it and all the usual stuff, right? My productivity alchemy stickers and some bands I know. And but the whole idea is I could spend all day tuning and fine-tuning that system, whether it's software, paper, some combination of the two. And you have to allow yourself space to do it, but you have to set limits.
How do you set the limits?
I'll schedule time with myself, right? And say, hey, I'm going to take 2 hours to do some project planning in the morning, or an hour, or whatever. Or if it's purely for the fun of it, like exploring new systems, trying new things, I'll do it after my quote unquote working hours. So part of our relaxation is every night Ursula and I'll sit down, and we just ran out of them. We'll watch like a Midsummer Murders episode. And she might be writing because it's it isn't you have to pay exclusive attention to this. Sometimes she's playing video games. Sometimes I'm reading blog entries or responding to emails or whatever. But this is just sort of our coming down, our downtime, low key sort of thing at night. And that's a great time for me to sit there and go, well, if I'm going to do the garage, here's all the things I ought to do, and break down that list. And it also limits me in that now, at some point, Ursula's going to say, dude, come to bed. So there's this hard stop of I have some accountability in there. And sometimes building in or finding someone to help you be accountable to do these things is really important.
Lindsay Ladd takes time every Sunday to plan her week, and she's not into all of this minute planning. She did a fabulous interview on the No Pants Show, and she talked about taking maybe 15-20 minutes every Sunday to sketch out the big things that she needs to accomplish in that week, and then go back and look and see whether or not the big things were done. Krista Thompson was on the show, and her suggestion was write down 4 things you must do each day, and then 4 things that you want to do each day.
Right.
And get the must-dos done first, or those are, non-negotiable. You have to get the must-dos done. And then go on to the want-to-dos. And then after that, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and the first method you described actually goes back to John Covey, and the Franklin Covey system of define your big rocks for the week. And so figure out what your big rocks are, and those are the things that you need to be focused on primarily. And usually it's things like your day job, your family, your, what are these big things, and what's the distinct action you're going to take this week around those big rocks. And then everything else, he did a great video and talk with it where he's showing like, here's a jar of pebbles, a jar of gravel, and a jar of literally, big rocks. And he's got this tub and he's like, all right, fit them all in. And your first response is, okay, I'm going to pour in the sand or the tiny stuff. But then you can't, because there's this layer of tiny crap there that's pushing everything out of the way. And through it, it's put the big rocks in, then the medium stuff. And then when you pour in the sand, the little stuff, it fills in all the gaps. Right. And that's what that first method is really doing, identifying those big rocks, and then all the little stuff fills in. All the little stuff fills in around it.
I find myself getting lost in the little stuff, and I know I'm not alone. What do you use? Do you use certain things to limit external distractions? For example, Mike Shreve turned us on to Brain FM. And I love using Brain FM. It doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
And I don't like some of the music and all of that kind of stuff. But I find it that I will get into a work zone with Brain FM on and just charge ahead.
And it varies depending on the day and my mood and where my headspace is. I would say about 50% of the time it's music. And I'm not a Brain FM user. I am a Sirius XM person, and it's all the metal channels. Love my heavy metal, love my gothic industrial music. You can't see it in this view, but I'm covered in tattoos, and I'm wearing a T-shirt from a band I saw open for Icon for Hire a couple months ago. And this is what I do for when I'm really going to relax. I'll go to a show, right? Completely disconnected, where it's just me and music and whatever. So
we
music
do that too, by the way.
Yeah,
we do that too. Yeah.
Yours may not be, all right, I'm going to get 4 rows from the stage and hopefully the pit will not try to crush me as part of that. That happened at, I want to say, Butcher Babies. They're a great band. They're an amazing metal band. But the pit was trying to overrun those of us up by the stage. It was an exciting time.
Melinda Pritz, who she and Jess Colonel just recently did a No Pants show about their YouTube channel, Nightmare Nocturne, and it's
nice,
fabulous, like scary kind of challenge. Fabulous. Well, Mel just recently posted. She said, "Oh, I don't think I can be in a mosh pit on a weeknight."
My back won't take it anymore. My hips won't take it anymore. I mean, I am becoming a man of a certain age, and so it's not that I'm old, it's that I'm sore and tired all the time now. But I think there are plenty of people who can commiserate that. So I've got the music. And then if there's something that I'm chewing on a lot in between meetings, and it's not something I need to be hyper focused on, I'll be honest, bad horror movies on Amazon and Netflix, something that's mostly just, it's color and noise and not really much of a plot to pay attention to.
Yes.
But the occasional scream, it's like, it was more the one job where I was working on that really heavy duty project, and I was really frustrated. It was kind of nice to occasionally hear the scream and look up and see the axe-wielding murderer taking out. But that may just be my own twisted bit.
I think that is your own twisted bit. But everybody has to figure out what is their own thing that helps them. And the thing that I really like about this is because then you can begin to distinguish busy work versus work that actually moves the project forward, the work that matters versus the work that may be fun to do because you're busy, but that ultimately doesn't do anything.
Oh, there's always the thing with a corporate desk job is that for whatever reason, companies past a certain size love their meetings, whether they're productive or not. And as I found on the one project, there are people who love their meetings and they want their status updates, twice a week, that are there just so that they feel that they're making a difference in moving the project forward. Not that it has any actual impact. Actually, it makes things move slower because now I have to take time out of where I would have been working on the thing to go and say, this is what I would be working on if you weren't having this meeting right now.
Huh.
In polite terms, because I've used, that's not the most diplomatic way of saying it, but you spend an hour on a phone listening to 15 people give status updates and debate about a piece of paperwork to file with the federal government and when it'll be ready and this, that, and the other. And you're like, I could be actually implementing this or filling out the piece of paper instead of sitting here listening about, as we call it often, bike shedding, right? You can't move forward until you figure out what color it was, I believe, a British nuclear plant. You can't build they couldn't build the nuclear plant until they figured out and approved what color to make the bike storage shed, right? And so bike shedding, just constantly discussing some little minute detail that has no impact on the entire project. I mean, yeah, we're going to have to make that decision, but you can't move forward until you decide that one little tiny detail. And it's a thing that happens in tech. It's a thing that happens all over the place. Drives me crazy because it has oftentimes it has absolutely nothing to do or impact on serving the customer. But people have to feel they have their input and that they have made their is that really the hill you want to die on, is that it needs to be blue and not green? You know what? You guys go have that. I'm going to go out with the nails in the wood and build the shed. You guys can paint it when you're done because I got other things to do.
In the freelancing world, that is part and parcel of mission creep,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah.
When you end up, and I've been there, I mean, we've all been there, and you're almost like a therapist for your client.
Mm-hmm.
You can't actually charge them for the work because you're not doing work. You're just chatting about things and hashing out things and all of this kind of stuff. And freelancers have said, how do I charge for this? What do I do with this? How do I limit this or get paid for it? Because in the freelancing world, actually in all of life, everybody only has 24 hours. Everybody has the same amount of time. So it's how you use that amount of time that determines the experiences that you have in your life, that determine the quality of your life.
Yeah. It was in Neil Gaiman's Death, the High Cost of Living, where I believe it was from that one, where the statement was, you get what everybody else gets, you get a lifetime. Doesn't matter how long it is, but you get that one lifetime. And so trying to figure out how to use it wisely and how to cut out some of that stuff. And if you're going to get paid about it is really tough. Now, you'll notice people don't call up and do that with their lawyers.
That's
because
true.
Lawyers bill, like if you call your lawyer and it's a 5-minute conversation, you're paying for 15 because they bill in 15-minute increments. And, maybe that's what you have to do. You have to say, look, here's the amount of time we have spent talking and not doing anything, or maybe just go into it saying, once we sign this contract, any interaction is billable and goes against this. That's entirely on, how you want to handle it. And it's a really hard question, one I never quite figured out. But I have enough lawyer friends that if I really wanted to build a contract and freelance and do that, I'm pretty sure I could get it written. I'm on retainer and this is how much you pay. And when you run out of money, you pay me more or we stop here. And I no longer do anything on a flat rate deliverable basis, because you have so much scope creep and mission creep. One of the things I learned the hard way in IT is, you bill hourly. If you don't bill hourly, if you say, you will pay me or I will make X and only X when Y is done, you will never get to Y, or Y will take 5 times longer and you end up taking a bath on it.
Those are all good points.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that we're kind of balancing is, do we want to get paid by the hour, or
Right.
we want to get paid by the project? Because then as you scale your business, get better, get more efficient. Obviously, your hourly rate goes up because you're using your time more effectively. Well, one of the things that some of the coaches in the No Pants Project have talked about is how to limit that. And
Hmm.
say, for example, do a monthly retainer
Yep.
and it's $2,000 a month, and say, I estimate that this will take me X amount of hours. And so then if mission creep starts coming in, you go back to the client and say, this was outside of our original agreement.
Hmm.
I estimate that this will take me this amount of time longer, and therefore the rate for that will be X. Or if it's the meetings and the chattings things,
Hmm.
then you say to the client, I notice that we're having a lot of meetings about this. Let me send you the cost estimate for my meeting rate.
Yep.
And then it's communicating in kind of a subtle or not so subtle way, definitely communicating to the client that your time is valuable.
Right. It's harder in the corporate world because everybody believes their time is more valuable than everybody else's, and that if they choose to have a meeting, you should be at that meeting because they have requested it and they are more important than you. So when I'm in a consulting situation and it is purely hourly, and I only work hourly now, I don't do per project. If there's a meeting and I'm on site, you're getting billed for it. If you call me at 4 a.m, you're getting billed for it. If I have to do, if I am not doing something of perceived value, I'm making myself available and dedicating myself to you and your needs. And therefore, this is something you need to pay me for. And if you come back and you say, well, I didn't know I was paying you for that meeting, then frankly, I'm not afraid to fire customers anymore. Right.
Good for you.
You know,
There was a post a while, just within the last couple of weeks, in the No Pants Project open community. And this woman was talking about a client of hers who has been a
mhm,
fairly long time client. And she had to drive 4 hours to the meeting, spend time at the meeting, then drive back 4 hours. So
right.
it's 8 hours of driving for a 4 hour meeting. And she talked to the client and said, okay, so, I'm assuming that you're going to pay me for the drive time, the
Yeah.
travel time. And the client said, absolutely not. I am only paying you for the meeting time.
Yeah.
Well, if you
Yeah.
add all of that up, whatever her rate is for 4 hours, it takes her, instead of 4 hours, it takes her 12 or
Hmm.
15,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
She has decreased her her hourly rate exponentially.
And there's a philosophy out there that I've come across multiple times in multiple jobs or multiple consultancies, and that is that you must do everything to keep the customer happy and retain the customer. And we lose sight of the fact that sometimes you're retaining the wrong customer, that you need to say no, that you need to say, this, just because we've had this relationship and whatever for 5 years doesn't mean that we need to continue doing business together, because now it's actually costing me more money to have you as a customer than that. And so it's part of the sunk cost fallacy, right? The idea that we've spent so much money on something that it costs us less to continue doing that something than to implement something new, when oftentimes that new thing will increase our productivity, will give us more time, will be more valuable over time. I was talking to the interview on this week's podcast, Damian Ryan, who's a release manager in Cambridge, UK. And he was talking about how one of his former companies, they had a finance person who was, all the billing for the company came through there, and she had the world's slowest PC. Right, it was really slow, but they had it and it worked, and there was no real need to upgrade it because they'd already spent that money and they don't need to spend more money on it. Well, it turns out when they did the upgrade, and when they finally did the upgrade, because it was just taking too long for her to process things, they found that the amount of money they made almost tripled because she was able to get the invoices out and everything processed faster, right? So you have to watch out for that. I've already spent the money on this. It's what we have. we will just keep going with it because it's what works. And that's just saying we have sunk a lot of cost into this, and now we're afraid to try something new because we're a little afraid of the unknown, but also that that we're scared of the unknown is the big one. We don't want to spend money we don't have. We don't want to lose the customer we've had for 10 years, even if that customer is actually costing us money, because obviously, customer service is king. There are customers you don't want. There are customers you don't want to have. Get rid of them because they're not improving your business, your life, or your financial standing.
Oh, that's great advice. Inside of the No Pants Project, I gently, kindly, nicely, but firmly disengaged from, I do ghostwriting, and I disengaged from 2 clients. And I was scared to death. I mean, they were a huge part of my income. I was scared.
Yeah.
And after I did that, I doubled my income that I lost.
Because suddenly you had time for the other customers.
And with great clients. Needy energy vampire clients. I mean, these are fabulous clients.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly my dream clients. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I've had space for them. I've had nonprofit customers, and nonprofit is tough if it's a cause you really believe in and you want to help out, but they want to squeeze every single microgram of copper out of a penny. And so I've had situations where a nonprofit was great to work with. I was doing the work I wanted to do, and that was fine. And then it ended. And then I've had ones where, they want a meeting every day. And then when you present the bill, they're like, don't you have a special nonprofit rate? Because everyone else we deal with gives us a big discount. And you find out that, you've, in an effort to get a customer and keep a customer, you're hurting yourself.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Let's end with how you balance immediate concerns versus management and planning for the future. Because I think that is one of the key areas of productivity, how to balance now and planning for the future.
It's all interrelated. Everything I do when I'm looking at, even if it's, in a lot of ways, I'm answering a ticket when I have a day job. I'm answering a ticket to fix a problem that's the immediate, that will make the customer happy. The next question, though, is this a recurring problem? Is this something that's going to come up again? Now's the time to evaluate that and either write some bugs or tickets to remind myself or the developers or whatever to go back and fix something, or document it so that if somebody else gets the same thing later, they know what to do. That by doing a little bit of work now, I'm saving myself lots of work in the future. When I look at actual future planning, I take a lot of lessons from my work and my training in Agile. Short time periods, short durations, sit down and figure out what you can accomplish in a short amount of time, and then when that time is over, go back and review it. In Agile parlance and software development, this would be the sprint. Take a 2-week sprint. Here's what we're going to get done in the sprint, whether you're putting it on a Kanban board, whether you're putting it on a to-do list, whether you're putting it on, a whiteboard on your wall or Post-it notes. Trello is a great app for this sort of thing. Does a Kanban board, and it's much more of what can I get accomplished in this small box of time, right? So let's plan that out and make sure you leave space, wiggle room for the interruptions, for the priorities that are going to come in. And then at the end of that time period, you go back and you review. And whether it's just you or when I was doing Scrum Master things, where we'd sit down with the whole team and we'd say, okay, what did we do right? What could we have done better? What should we start doing? What should we continue doing? And what should we stop doing? The old start, stop, continue review. And if you don't do those are really important. I picked those up in the Boy Scouts Wood Badge training.
Did you really?
Yeah, I used to be an antelope. I have my Wood Badge beads, so I've been through that entire course line. But all of it interrelates, right? They don't call it the same thing when you talk about reviewing in Scrum or reviewing in Agile, but it really is like taking a moment to say, am I doing the right thing? There we go, full circle, right? Am I doing the right thing? Do I need to keep doing it? Do I need to stop doing it? Do I need to try something new? Start, stop, continue.
Well, start, stop, review, and continue.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Because I
The
think
review is,
the review is
well,
perfect. And
actually,
that's what you do on the podcast. You review different, talk about what works, what doesn't work, what you're doing, which is one of the reasons why I just absolutely, I love the podcast, because you and Ursula will sit there and say, well, we tried this and it did not work at all. Or we tried this, or this particular test subject is doing this and it's working great.
Last year, when I first have her try bullet journaling, did not work for her, and that's fine. That's why we tried it, and we're trying to find the things that work for her. But she looked at it, and she looked at everything online about bullet journals, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's a cult." And yeah, there's a little
bunch of people in the No Pants Project that love bullet.
No, and there's some great stuff in there. I mean, the bullet journal, the methodology, all of it is fantastic, and I really like it. But when you start digging in, like you're just, I'm going to go look up bullet journaling, and now you're in the Pinterest and all the pages people have made and the this and that, and they're so open-ended in creativity, and then you get to the evangelical bullet journalers, which are like, oh no, you have to use this, it's for everybody. She just looked at it all and she said, it's a cult. Oh, well, earlier this year, I said, you know what, I'm going to give this a real try for me. Right? I'm going to start applying some of these methods and some of the methodology to keeping track, because I don't have a job right now. I have time to screw up if I screw up, it's not like I'm losing money for a customer or something like that. I have time to experiment. And at its core, the base methodology is fantastic, but it is so easy to go say, I wonder if there's someone who designed a page to do X. And the next thing you know, it's 6 hours later and you've got 15 Pinterest tabs open and 3 different Etsy shops. And you're like, I could write one of these myself and then start posting it to Instagram. You have to be really careful about that.
I love that advice. And, truthfully, if I had won the lottery, I think that's the sort of thing that I would do with my time. I mean, just get lost in the rabbit hole of learning and information and doing and creating and all of that, and just go off in a million directions. But as freelancers, we can't do that. You've got to be more disciplined.
You have to limit your time. Yep.
Yeah, you have to start your business. You have to grow your business. You have to plan for the future of your business. And in order to do that, start your day right.
Yep.
A cup of coffee and
or tea or whatever your beverage of choice is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea in your particular Zen moment.
Yeah.
Kevin recommends communing with chickens.
It works for me. It might not work for you. And there was something else that was just on the tip of my tongue, and it has fled. As my wife would say, that I can see the bunny butt of the thought with its little white tail going off into the distance. I'll remember what it was in a second.
Yes.
Yes, I was going to say, and don't be afraid to try different things as part of it. I talk about limiting your time. There's actually a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is designed around you work in 25-minute segments, you take a 5-minute break.
And there's an app for that.
There are so many apps for that. Yeah. There's so many apps. But the whole idea is now you can start to figure out, how long does something take, right? How long does it take to recover? If you get interrupted, you can make a note of that, and then you can see how long it takes for you to get back on track. Just writing it down so that you know what you were doing and how much time things took, and enforcing break times in there is hugely powerful. Start to build habits that you will continue to reuse.
Perfect. We will leave it at that. Kevin Sonney, thank you so much. Kevin and Ursula do the podcast, Productivity Alchemy. You've got to look up this podcast. It is tons of fun, and the two of you are just amazing on it. Thank you.
We have so much fun, and we are eternally grateful to everyone who listens, and to everyone who writes in, and to everyone who, even if you just listen and you go, this is kind of cute, but it's not for me, and you never listen again, we're grateful that you gave us a chance. So thank you very much for having me on. It's been fantastic.
Yay! Thank you. I've had a blast, and I'm thrilled that I've gotten to gotten to know you. I know that Ursula is off and writing. So tell her that I said thank you as well. And I'm sure that all of us will meet up at a comics convention or a sci-fi convention
Yep.
at some point in the future.
At the moment, I can say, yeah, thinking of conventions, I will be doing Productivity Alchemy live at WindyCon in Chicago on November 10th. So I have a panel at WindyCon, the science fiction convention there, that's I'm going to do a live recording. Our next, I think, joint appearance, as it were, will be around Anthrocon in Pittsburgh, the world's largest anthropomorphic art convention. That'll be around July 4th. And then we'll be at Bubonicon next August in Albuquerque. It's a great science fiction event. It's got some amazing authors who just happen to live around Albuquerque, so they're regulars where any other event you'd go to, you'd be paying top dollar to meet them. So I love Bubonicon, and we'll be linking all of that on productivityalchemy.com and all our sites as the year progresses. So
I love that. Thank you so much for being here.
yeah, you're very welcome. And have me again. I'd love to do it again.
Awesome. We absolutely will. And thank you to all of you for joining us here at
Yeah,
the
no,
No
you guys are
Pants
awesome.
Show.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us. If you're watching this on YouTube, head on over to Facebook and type in the search bar, No Pants Project Open Community. Just click join, answer the questions, and you can join a community of 18,000 plus freelancers who are in various stages of freelancing. And we're all learning and growing and doing and helping one another to succeed. So go and be productive.
Be productive, folks.